In a high-performance home, a fireplace isn't needed for heat. It's more about the emotional gathering and even the seasonality of a home built in New England. When we started this project, the fireplace was actually a wood-burning stove, and it was going to be installed in this marble hearth, placed up against the exterior wall, and really was this understated element. It was there, it was something that could be used, but it wasn't really part of the design in a big way. And, you know, like any project, sometimes things change. On this project, we realized that we had this structural issue with getting the flue up and through the roof. And what happened was, being that it's a wood-burning fireplace, you're only really allowed to change that flue direction so many times. So having the wood-burning stove on the exterior wall, we ran into challenges of getting the flue all the way up through the roof in a manner that would protect the front of the building. The fireplace is on the front wall, and if we had went straight up, we would have ended up kind of impeding on that really clean roof line that's on the front of the building. So what that meant is, in design, we ended up pulling the fireplace into the room, which started to feel as though it was taking up more space, and how could we make it feel intentional? So what came of that was something that could be sat around, or a 360 fireplace. We ended up having to reframe the floor in the living room to allow for this unit to sit down and flush. You know, it wasn't something that is required, but you know, in terms of how this can be installed, it felt right for the space. We wanted it to feel as though it was part of the room, and it wasn't really this monumental moment where it was coming up and out of the floor. We wanted it to feel as though it was built in. So we end up reframing the floor to accommodate that. Additionally, the living room has these wood beams in the ceiling, and they're 25 feet long, single piece, continuous all the way across, and we worked really hard to prevent any of those from being interrupted. And when we moved the fireplace out, we no longer could run that flue between the beams up in completely uninterrupted way. So we ended up working with Madeira, who made all of the 25-foot beams, allowed us to cut one of those beams short and essentially header off this opening for the fireplace to go up and through. On the second floor, we actually had to be really creative with the way the primary closet worked. The main closet was uninterrupted, but the hallway closet, we had all this additional storage space, these plastered in cabinets, and we needed that flue to go up through that space. So really carefully coordinating the millwork design to really be as least impactful as we could be, and still get up into the attic and eventually through the roof of the building, getting that flue through the flat roof section of the house. And from the street, you can see the hat poke above the hip roof just ever so slightly, but it's not impeding that roof line that we were concerned with in the original design. Now, a high-performance home with a wood-burning fireplace takes a lot of consideration. When you're burning wood, it requires oxygen, and the house being built to a high-performance standard is very tight. So when you start starving the home of oxygen, you get into the situation where you start creating imbalance. Makeup areas where you're pulling fresh air from the outside and replacing the oxygen in the home while you're burning. So the fireplace itself actually has its own makeup air system. So when you are burning, you open up the damper and it's pulling in makeup air from outside, making sure that the home never gets into a negative pressure imbalance, which can cause issues with backdrafting or even the smoke getting up and out through the flue. We want to make sure that this unit is self-contained and controlling not just the heat, but also the smoke that's going to be produced by the wood. We chose not to bring natural gas in this house. We could have, but it was a strategic choice really to focus on indoor air quality. So we weren't having any fossil fuels in the home, any fossil fuels burning, nothing for cooking or heating, and now not for the fireplace either. So we stuck with the wood, and really being that it's not a source of heat for the home, that wood plays into the emotional aspect of lighting a fire. So we worked with the manufacturer as well as the installation crew to understand what was required in terms of combustible materials and the details around the fireplace. It does have a glass shroud that protects the fire from the adjacent surfaces. We still need to make careful considerations of how the space around the fireplace is treated, especially when it comes to code required clearances for combustible materials. So we actually had a fabricator fabricate 2 escutcheons for us. One of them square, which goes up into the ceiling and allows the flue to pass through, and the other round that goes around the base of our fireplace, and we ended up routering it completely flush with the floor. So we hit our code required non-combustible materials in terms of around the fireplace in preparation for the fireplace to go in. The fireplace itself, similar to a lot of details in the home, is very simplistic. It's this sheet metal hood that is suspended from the ceiling, and then this tray in the floor that supports the logs and the glass shroud, and also has your integrated makeup air system built into it. And I think that's the beauty of what we installed with this, is that it is simple, but it really leans into the performance and the emotional aspect of what this home wanted in terms of a fireplace. What we wanted to avoid was the fireplace demanding attention in the space. The living room is designed to be lived in. Families will share movies in here, friends will share conversations, and that fireplace, whether it's burning or not, will anchor that part of the room. And the detailing in the way it's installed and the simplicity around the design really allows it to be that emotional anchor point in this space. This fireplace is typically installed in upscale hotel lobbies or commercial spaces. So there's only been a handful of these installed in a residential application. So to be able to include it in a project like this feels special, but also really intentional. The fireplace is a great example of how we balance high performance with design. And for us, beauty is just as important as performance. So something like adding a wood-burning fireplace strictly for the emotional aspect of the build, while considering how it impacts the performance, is true to our ethos and the way we build.